Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. My name is Brian Doyle, and I'm here with Tim McNeil today from our side. And unfortunately, we're experiencing some storms, or at least Tim and Rob are in upstate New York, and we lost Rob to a power loss today. So
yep, just about 5 minutes before we started.
We don't get to bash him this time because this one's out of his control, you know. So we'll cut him some slack today.
I've been telling this guy to get a generator since he moved into this house.
Yeah, where you guys live?
I still got grounds to rip on him, so we're fine.
Where you guys live, that's probably more of a necessity than an amenity, if you will, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But you know what we're excited about today. I know that we've shared in previous podcasts that we were all working within the Pitch IT program by ConnectWise. Tim and Rob, of course, with sales maturity, and myself with VCIO Toolbox. And one of the things that we've been doing is learning about the interesting things that our fellow members or fellow participants are doing. And, we've been asking a few of them that have some really unique products out in the marketplace to come join us today here on the podcast. So today I'm really pleased to introduce to you all Greg Sharp and Trevor Thomas from ZenContract. They'll go a little bit deeper into their product, but for those of you that are having any kind of challenges with contract organization or maybe thinking of an exit someday, you're going to enjoy this one. And with that, I want to say welcome, guys. How you doing today?
Thanks for being on.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for having us, Brian and Tim, on the podcast. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, before we were kicking off, just having some of our back conversation today, we were talking a little bit about Pitch IT, and there's been some great speakers that have come through there, and I think all of us might agree our favorite was yesterday. Good old Jay McBain joined us. I know there's very few of you out there who don't know who Jay is. And man, he threw some numbers when he was talking about ecosystem that just blew my mind yesterday. This is an easy game. Yeah. We just got to get out in front of 2,000 different parties, in order to have success. Yeah. But it was always a great listen. And today, what I'm excited to hear about is a little bit more about kind of the origin story behind ZenContract and how this can help MSPs who might not yet have an awareness of the product. So with that, Greg or Trevor, I'm not sure who wants to kick things off, but maybe tell us a little bit about yourselves and your backgrounds.
Why don't we do introductions first? So I'm Greg Sharp, CEO and founder of ZenContract, and have been in the MSP game for, I think, about 25 years now, long before they were called MSPs, certainly from where I'm from in New Zealand. But yeah, have been on various advisory and boards with Datto and friends with Rob Ray, and he used to fly me around to do various speaking gigs and things. So I've been around the MSP game for a while, and luckily enough, got to meet through Trevor's wife, actually, Desiree Thomas, who's well known in the channel. Got to meet Trevor, and he's now working with us. So with that, I'll throw it to you, Trevor, and you can do your intro.
Oh, you took away all my thunder. Yeah, Trevor Thomas, VP of Sales here. I was going to go into the backstory of, I fell into this in a very odd way where Desiree, who wasn't technical, started working at Passportal. That was about 8 years ago. And, telling me about the MSP channel and all the big players, meeting Greg, of course, Rob Ray, all the other big names. And I kind of just became enamored with it, right? I've always loved the tech space, right? Video games, bit nerdy, that kind of thing. And then just the community that's built within the MSP channel is what really drew me in. So I jumped at the opportunity to work with Greg.
Very cool.
Yeah, cool. So the backstory, like I said, I've been in this MSP game. Everyone can easily tell that's either listening or watching or both that I have an accent. So I live on the other side of the world in New Zealand. We used to come to various conferences when we had our MSP in the early days, and go to some of the Autotask ones and hang out with Lenny Costanzo and Mark Catini in those days. Through meeting them and getting to know those people from them coming to New Zealand, because we were some of the early adopters in Autotask. We got to host them at our house and take them out on my boat and that type of thing, and build a relationship with them. So whenever I went north, they got me to do speaking gigs, and that way I got to know other people as Autotask and Datto came together. But the origin of ZenContract as such was in the last MSP that I built up before we sold it. In about 2017, we realized that our business, if it was ever to be sold and also to become a lot more operationally efficient, and reduce all of our operational risk is that we need to have a decent contract structure in place, and not just the very vague one that we used to send out on the odd occasion, and occasionally someone would sign it and then you'd go to reference and find it and it would be stored on someone's desk or have coffee spilt on it and only be signed by one party and maybe wasn't quite reflective of all the services that were being provided. So we mapped out, what were all the touch points of getting a proper contract system in place, and we built it for an MSP at that stage to interface with Autotask. It now interfaces end to end with ConnectWise, hence we're part of the Pitch It program with you lovely folks. And we've ever since, we've sort of been building this piece of software, and kind of like the IT glue story, I guess, that was never released for the first 8 years. If we've just been sort of chiseling away at it until it's something that was saleable and applicable for wider consumption. Luckily, some time during COVID allowed us to do that it's now very much consumable by the average and larger MSP and even groups of MSPs, because it's got a master tenancy function. But anyway, that's enough about the product. But that was the origin of it, certainly born out of an MSP and solving a problem that we had, and it became very apparent over time that it was something that other MSPs were looking to improve on as well.
Yeah, I mean, contract management is definitely one of the biggest challenges, especially in the world of MSPs, where a lot of these contracts become open-ended at the point of contract end. And that's, we know some good M&A advisors. I've gone through the process, both buy side and sell side too. And, that puts a lot of gray area into the valuation too, because there's no teeth in that migration if that's an open-ended contract. So, definitely hitting a problem that seems, rudimentary at the surface, but is a much, much bigger challenge in the marketplace than people give credit for.
Well, I think it also comes, by way of a lot of MSPs start out with, one guy who worked at a larger tech company said, hey, I like doing this. I want to give back to, the greater population. And it starts really grassroots, handshakes, that kind of thing. And you get to a point where, there is that operational risk and you need to have the contracts, but then you're kind of scared to implement something. Hey, me and Greg have been working together for 5 years. I know his kids. I go to birthday parties. We golf together, all these things. I don't want to throw a contract at him, right? There's this scary aspect of it, right? And which I think comes from that good nature, but is also, aside from the risk, it just puts all parties at ease, right?
Yeah, there's a great saying that from where we come from, a rugby player who ended up getting a knighthood, but he had this amazing saying that was always went along the lines of, when the shit hits the fan, go back to the plan. And so when everyone involved in the business engagement understands exactly what the rules of engagement are and how to go about doing them, it actually can save a friendship when something blows up, because everyone knows what process to follow and that side of things. So there's that side of it, dealing with disputes. So there's also who's responsible for what type of things, and then also generally just putting together the construct of how this engagement is going to go on a financial basis, and what's the increase. Maybe it's increasing billing on a semi-annual basis, or we're having a discussion about billing each, once a year and adjusting pricing, and also what's our renewal term going to be. There's all that just construct of when we're engaging with each other. That is a business premise, regardless of whether you use our software or someone else's. It's actually a business topic that you need to get an understanding and a handle on, that allows you to scale. If you want to run, you and a couple of staff and run 15 or 20 clients and be extremely high touch with those clients, that's great. You could probably do that with minimal contracts and run that operational risk. And but as either those clients grow or your client list grows, you're going to need some repeatable business process to be able to help you scale and not lose touch with those clients and not massively increase your risk profile.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, just with Rob and I, even though Rob's not here, we focus more on helping MSPs grow their sales departments, right? And one of the things that we have seen over the years is the general chaos. In fact, we've got a couple clients right now that are pretty large MSPs, like shockingly large for the amount of chaos that they have within their just their stack as well as their contracts, right? It's literally a conversation that I've been having with a client of ours over the last 3 or 4 weeks on how can we get the service manager to work to get a true snapshot of how many clients they have, who's on what, who's got a contract, when did it end, how long is it supposed to be, is it renewed? I mean, these are all things that I'm trying to work with this client on so that they can set up their budget for next year, but also just to help them stabilize. So a lot of words to say, I might have a client for you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, look, that was one of the things we were trying to do, again, away from being salesy for our software, but just to get a snapshot of exactly where your ARR is over the next 12, 24, 36 months. I'm convinced one day that's how our MSPs are going to be valued. It'll be a multiplier of contracted revenue over the course of the next 12, 24, 36 months. It might be a blend on that, but you can come up with a formula. And it does give you a real sense of stability in knowing that you have contracted revenue for the next 1, 2, 3 years and at what level. It makes, and of course, it makes your business, more valuable. So we went through the business or the process of selling our business during COVID, actually, and it settled just last year. And we ended up with a 10x multiplier, and which is really good, and certainly really good in where we come from. We started off at we went to market, and it was at a 5 and a 6, and we actually worked with the purchaser to say, right, well, we're not there. What are the things in our due diligence area that would be significantly improved, and improve the valuation and make your life easier, because we weren't quite at the threshold where they're a big company where it made sense for them to write the check. So they were kind of invested in helping us get higher up the stack, which was a beautiful blend. And one of the things that they talked about was getting everything on a contract, making sure all of your MSAs, your master services agreements, are all in place and all locked and tidied. And then potentially go back to all your customers and try and lock in their revenue for a little bit longer, even if you're giving them a little bit of a monthly discount. And that's not actually as hard as it might sound, because typically people are staying with you because they like their services from you as the MSP. Yeah. Now, a contract's one thing, even though if it's binding, and maybe it is for telco services or equipment, but for service, if they're not happy with you, it's pretty easy to be able to just say, well, you're not performing the way we need to. Let's end the engagement. So those ones that are with you are probably quite happy to sign on an ongoing basis for a bit longer term with a discount, because they're going to stay with you anyway. So.
I mean, that's a great point. We used to operate in, when I said 3-year contracts with a lot of my customers, and like that, oh, that's too long. And I said, well, are we going to execute on everything we identify in your roadmap and plan in year 1? You're not probably not, because you're not going to have the budget to do so. So this is a journey we work on together. And you're spot on in terms of the contract. It's more of I used to use the contract more of, how do I stay organized? How do I know what's coming in? But more importantly, how do we manage scope creep? How do we make sure everybody's got that line in the sand and knows what the responsibilities were, as you mentioned earlier? And that's really where we would lean on that. But otherwise, the contract really was only as good as today. If the relationship went sour, like you said, both parties don't have anything to gain by staying in it. Every MSP is like, oh, I want to get a termination clause and all that. And you're like, look, if you and the customer aren't gelling, maybe it's a personality thing, maybe it's a service thing, whatever the case may be, you're not going to want to stay together. So what do you care about what the divorce terms are? Just move on, get away, and then, use the contract for where it can support you. Demonstrating value, demonstrating the customer's at least on the hook for something, and then putting together that, that fence on what we're going to do and what we're not going to do for this fee.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the term, and it's, it's in the ConnectWise world, it's used widely, which is agreement, but Zen agreement didn't have a ring to it. So we went with ZenContract. But,
well, agreement's a lot less threatening, right? It's those nebulous words. It's why we're all business development, not sales, right?
It's funny when you're setting things up, it's quite exciting. As in, I got signed on a recording contract. That sounds pretty great.
Yeah.
When something's being pulled apart, like I just got sent my divorce contract, it's like, oh shit, yeah. So it's
fair point.
Yeah, that's it. It depends on whether you're setting it up and tearing it down.
So, in terms of your customers that are coming on board, is ZenContract built to integrate with the PSAs that they're utilizing and feed that data or pull that data in or feed that data out? How is that working for the average end user in this world where everybody wants more and more automation every minute? How does that process work for you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. Thanks for bringing it up. There's it's highly integrated into the main two PSAs at the moment. So, being ConnectWise and Autotask. We will be working on Halo as the next one. That's in the not too distant future, but I don't know the timeframe just yet. So that's at a customer level. So all of the customer data is then all of your pricing, work types, inventory types, all of that stuff comes across as well. So because obviously with a recurring monthly contract, you need to have some of those items on there. Our solution doesn't play in the CPQ distribution feeds type of thing. It's from the PSA. I think it's important to bring that up in case someone's thinking this is another price quoting tool. It's not. It's very much in the recurring monthly revenue management, and then it's also highly hooked into Office 365 for storing all of those executed contracts split by customer afterwards, which gives you your beautiful data room. And also on the compliance side of things, when it uses e-signatures all built into the platform, it gathers all the signatures, it executes the contract, stores it in a locked PDF, and then fires it back up into the PSA against the opportunities in both those PSAs, and it can help automatically execute those opportunities as well. So you end up with this predefined workflow that goes from template through to negotiation, through to execution, through to compliance and storage, and you end up with a workflow that makes sure that the human error doesn't get in the way. So someone can't only sign half of it, someone can't store it in the wrong place or not store it anywhere. The software manages all of that risk management and contract management process from beginning to end for the MSP. So it saves a lot of time and effort, and there's a little bit of
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, it almost sounds, and please keep me honest here if I'm incorrect in this, but almost like a flexible template, because you've got that combination of bringing dynamic objects into it that are required for the contract, but yet you're getting your base master terms put into play. And that's been a wrestling match. I mean, years ago when I was at within my old MSP, we put together these MSA agreements, and every time we added something to a contract, we went through this approach model of adding attachments to that master agreement. And one of the things that customers got was signing fatigue. They're like, we've got a master service agreement. How can this not be just an addendum to the master service agreement? Why do we have to, sign another contract so it becomes an attachment, even if it's going to be coterminous to the first one? And these were the kind of battles that we had, and that was driven by our legal team. As you know, that when risk comes into play, we're going to have as much paperwork as we can have. But it also became a sales friction component. It became difficult to, it's not so much it became difficult to service our clients, but it became one of those things our clients didn't like. So here you've got this wonderful relationship where everything's kicking on all cylinders, and every time they got to buy something, there's this thing that they have to review because maybe they have to look at it legally too. And, we would slow down progress through this. And that's something they're looking to, that everyone wants to eliminate. So kudos to you, because it really sounds like those dynamic components and those static components really can solve that issue.
The system's set up to 4 main templates, without getting into it too much, but it's more of a business structure than it is a software structure. So you have a master services agreement. You get that all obviously has all your terms and conditions, who's important in this business relationship, what are our payment terms, any escalation requirements, should there be a problem, how do we go about doing that, who talks to who. And so it sets all that up, and you just get that over to them, and they sign that once, and then it's stored there in perpetuity, and that's the foundational arrangement for which you're going to sell on. So all of your service schedules post that reference your master services agreement, but they only have to go through it, and they pull it apart, put it back together, or their legal team looks at it, and then it's done, and then that's foundational stone that's just there in perpetuity. And then you set the service schedules which will pull all of this stuff dynamically out of the PSA, and you send it over there, and then once it's signed, it automatically builds that into the PSA and sets that recurring monthly agreement up in the PSA, ready to be built out. So you're right, Brian, to bring that up, is that you want to get your terms and conditions and all your legal requirements in front of that person once, get it signed, and then put it away to avoid signing fatigue. All they're doing is accepting new services, and that is automatically getting built into your PSA, so you're a lot less administrative overhead.
That makes it so much easier for the account managers of the world, the VCIOs of the world, right? They can go into a QBR and you don't have to worry about, I mean, Brian, I can think of, I can't even tell you how many times back when I was still in the as a salesperson in the MSP world, that can turn into an issue going with one more signature.
And the thing is, when you go into a QBR situation now in this day and age, a lot of times you're going in there with 15 things you're presenting in front of your customer over 2 years, and you're walking out with 7 of them being agreed to on the spot. And the more that we can, streamline the process of getting those things accepted and getting to the next step in it, the easier this process becomes, because you don't want to lose that inertia. The whole reason, our MSPs are investing time into the QBR is, stay engaged with the customer, keep them informed, and show them how things are progressing. But the hope is, if we do a good job of consulting with them, we're going to come away with a lot of different projects. And, having an organized way to get those things kicked off when you might be getting approval for 6 to 8 things that might still be happening over the course of 6 months time frame, but being able to kind of treat them as a single bundle would be huge.
Yeah. And the other things that the MSPs are using this for is project variation sign-off. So when you're in the middle of a project and there's a scope, not disagreeing it by some desegregated email or God forbid verbal or something like that, and then later on, it's not getting billed. So, throwing it into, we have templates for that, and just getting a scope variation cut and pasted in and send it off for a signature, and then it's stored nice and neatly automatically into the PSA against the opportunity or against the contract. You get where I'm going with that, but just capturing all of those things, and we've got this feature in solution negotiation going on. So when you're sending out an MSA or another service schedule, and you agree slightly different terms outside of your normal, it'll track all those kind of like track changes in Word and then addend it to the contract. So someone's got a reference ability to understand at what time this was agreed by this person, and it's just easy to be able to track those things and go back and have a look.
Well, I tell you, I applaud you on 2 things. The change control one is definitely a big issue out in the marketplace, because I can tell you all we did was lose money when changes would come into a project, because there always seems to be this cross disconnect in what the conversation was. It alludes back to what I was saying about, having the fence on what the project scope or the service scope was. And you'd see the MSP just going, fine, we'll eat the cost to keep the relationship and keep the peace and keep the harmony. Or we'll discount it down significantly because there was a disconnect in communication. And obviously without, all parties being in the room at the time that this was agreed to, very difficult to really say, the he said, she said side of it. So nice to know that there's kind of a way to formalize that process, kind of, and get the acceptance that way, so all parties are on the same page when the bill comes.
Yes, you having run an MSP for a long time, the main thing that you realize after a while is that your team, your employees, however you refer to them, are pretty much 99% geared up to do a really good job by the client. They buy into the service ethic, right? We just figured out that we needed to give them gateways to where they to record their time or get permission, and so give them a business process that allowed them to do that brilliant job and allowed the MSP to flourish financially. Because if you didn't do that, they would do all of the work for the wonderful customer, and only the owner would end up paying for it, the owner of the MSP, so they weren't trying to make anyone go broke. We just need to give them good systems to allow them to record the revenue in the right way.
All right. Well, I know we're getting near the end of our time together. Trevor, Greg, any closing comments or anything else you'd like to share? Are you going to be anywhere anytime soon? We know that you will be up against all of us and pitch it, but what's upcoming for you, and what can people look forward to from ZenConnect or ZenContract, excuse me?
Why don't you go first, Trevor? And you can give us commentary on how you're finding working in the channel.
I'm loving working in the channel. There's a lot of characters in here, especially in our cohort with Pitch It. I know a couple of them personally from previous experience, but no, it's great. As far as, what's coming up, there's the Pitch It program, then there's going to be IT Nation Connect in the fall there. We're focusing on kind of a bunch of webinar strategies with other players. So, you invited us to this. we're doing a webinar, not next week, but the following week with Larry Meter from DataStream Cyber Insurance. Greg's hosting a masterclass on getting sale ready, very topical on the valuation side of things. So that's a big focus for us moving forward, just because it's scalable and it's easier to connect in this remote world.
Yeah, we've got an interesting dynamic where our teams are located all around the world, from London, Manila, Alberta, Toronto, New Zealand, and Sydney. So finding a time zone's interesting, but some of the travel is also interesting. We're highly involved in CompTIA, so we were looking at being up at ChannelCon. I'm not sure if we're going to make that work, actually, because of some of our visa requirements from our folks in Manila. But then this I think as well as I do, there's a lot of shows. But yeah, we're pretty much culminating on just running this course of Pitch It, and then being at IT Nation in Orlando later in the year. And a couple of CISSP conferences along the way. So.
I do have to give one shout out, because we are going to the Can IT Con show that's in Banff, Alberta. So it's about, if I look out my window that way, I know people can't see me pointing, and I don't know why I'm pointing, but imagine that I'm pointing west. That's where the mountains are. So it's about an hour and a half from my house, and it's going to be gorgeous. If you're in Canada or you want to make that show, it's going to be a good one. So
awesome.
I was going to say, that's a good place to be.
A relatively new show, but they've got all the main sponsors and great speakers that are coming up. Should be good.
Yeah, awesome.
Very cool.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing a little bit more about ZenContract, and a little bit about kind of your experiences going through M&A, what drove you to building the product. With that being said, we'll be posting your LinkedIn addresses with this episode when we put it on MSPbusinessschool.com. You can download this anywhere that you get your podcasts, and it will also be up on YouTube. So people will get to see you point, Trevor. They still don't know what you're pointing at, but they will see you pointing. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for joining us. Tim, any last comments on your side?
No, it's just really nice having you both on. Looking forward to seeing you again next week and on the next Pitch It.
All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Likewise. Thanks.
Bye now.